Once again, when it comes to defending yourself up against the wall, no matter what the attack is, we have to learn how to utilize the wall to our advantage, keep our weight shifted properly on the wall, keep our weight nice and low, and essentially we just have to stay heavy enough to where that person cannot maneuver us at their own free will. And in turn, we then have to start using their energy to put themselves back into the wall as we work ourselves off the wall. So for today, we're going to go over what happens if somebody just tackles you up against the wall. So if we end up in this type of situation, now, again, depending on how this person tackles you, they can be nice and low right around your waist, or they can be riding high a little bit to where your arms are elevated. All kind of have similar exit strategies, but the entry and how we get into this slightly different. It slightly differentiates depending on, again, how high they are. So we're going to start with the highs and we're going to work ourselves down. If they're in this position where their elbows are heavy, if at any point during these situations I can throw in a couple knees while they're not looking, especially if they're nice and tight. Now some guys are going to keep their hips tight to you and they're going to drive that knee in. Now at this position, obviously it's very difficult for me to be able to maneuver my hips. I need to create some sort of space between my waist and theirs. So this is the time, latch on, start working your knees a little bit. And then again, as their hips start getting away from me, now I can start working my hips off to one side or the other, and it allows me to get a little bit heavier. But if they're driving into your hips real tight, I'm not going to be able to move. So your knee strikes, again, 2-3 strikes, get them to break that distance a little bit, and then drop your weight. That's going to be your first step, and that's going to be the same across no matter how high or low they're grabbing you. Now, the second step is I have to get some sort of pressure going on their head. Now, obviously, if my hands are all up high because they're under my shoulders, I physically am not going to be able to just push down on the head like this. So instead, I start using my elbow and start driving my elbow down. And again, I can start working those knees to make the space. And as I'm driving that head down with my elbow, I start moving my hips off to the side. Now, once I get to that angle, it starts getting a little bit easier for me to switch between my forearm or my elbow to my forearm to my hand. And as we continue that pressure and I get to my hand, now I'm really going to start driving that head straight down. As that happens again, I start working my hips off to the side and I'm slowly redirecting his energy into the wall, which again, he's continuously trying to drive into me to keep me in place. So as I transfer that energy, eventually it makes it really easy for us to trade places and we work ourselves off the wall. But that's not always going to be the case if you can't get pressure on the head. Now, you don't always, especially when they're grabbing up high like this, you don't always have to get that pressure there. I can work underhooks from this position. Again, create that space with those knees, start working in your underhook grip here a little bit, and I can lock up my hands here. Now, from here, as I start working this under grip, I'm going to start elevating my elbow a little bit, which starts elevating his shoulder. And as that happens, again, he's still driving into me, trying to keep me up against the wall. As I start trading those places, I can now work this hand across the head here. Now I've got the arm elevated, I've got pressure on the head. The more that he drives into me, it allows me to start working that space out. I get my hips away, drive his head straight into the wall, and then from here, if you want to work strikes, you can. If you want to trade places and put them up against the wall, now you restrain them, that's fine. Otherwise, again, because we are focused strictly on self-defense here, work yourself off and get away, or at least get back to an open position to where he can't use the wall to his advantage. If they're going a little bit more towards the torso, it's a little bit easier for me to instantly get this pressure down on the head. Now, the one thing you have to be worried about the closer they get to your hips is that he's going to start looking to attack your legs if you're taking too long. Now, if I'm standing straight high like this, my weight is completely distributed throughout my whole body, which means my feet are a little bit lighter. It's easy for him to start hooking up to my legs with his hands or his feet, and he can start pulling my hips away and start working towards takedowns from there. If he's incredibly low, or if my feet are too far out like this, he can easily grab them, again, hook them either with his feet or pick them up with his hands and slam me to the ground. So you have to understand that when they are a little bit lower, it is easier for me to get my hips out right away. So drop those hips, get nice and heavy on them. And again, I don't want to stay squared up. I need to make sure that I work off to some sort of an angle so that if he does try to grab one of my legs, I can easily start kicking it back. I can start getting real heavy on that leg. Whereas if I'm in the front and he starts pulling it, it's going to be very difficult for me to be able to escape that. So drop your hips, turn off on that angle. Again, I'm instantly starting to put pressure, and the head pressure is going to be key here. Nothing else on the body really matters at this point other than applying this pressure. Again, I can deal with him pushing into me, and the more that I keep this pressure, he can push into me all he wants, but he physically is not going to be able to keep my waist in place. Now, if I'm not doing anything to the head and he's driving into me and I'm just trying to move the body, it's very difficult for me to be able to get off to the side. But the second I apply that pressure on the head and he applies the same pressure back, I can start working the angle a little bit more because I'm preventing his body from coming forward. That's going to work in my advantage. And again, that's why that head control is so key when you're in these tight situations. So again, he's in close. I get nice and heavy, I turn, I post on the head. Again, whether it's your forearm, your elbow, your hand, I'm posting on the head and redirecting it away a little bit as I work off. Again, once I have that opening, transition, let them come into the wall, and we work ourselves off. He's real low, he's on the waist, he dropped way down here. Obviously, it's incredibly easy to get my hand pressure here. The knees are going to be a little bit hard, so this is kind of where it goes opposite. If they're up tall, it's really easy to throw in the knees. The lower they go, it gets a little bit harder to throw the knees, and it's also riskier because as I throw that knee, I'm giving him an opportunity to tie up with it, and again, that can end very badly for me. So at this point, it's key that we get heavy and our hips off to the side very quickly. Again, we're just posting on here. I don't necessarily want to walk and try and escape out in front of him. I want to redirect his energy one direction, and I want to work myself the other direction, because if I go out the same way, he's just going to continue chasing me, or if anything, I'm giving him my back, and again, we're in a worse position from there. So always try and exit out the back door, essentially, post on that head as we get away. Now from here, if you want to throw knees underneath, if I want to drop elbows if I need to, once we transition, if I need to throw strikes, I can, or like I said, if we transition and you want to retake control of this situation for whatever reason, if you have to restrain them, or let's say he decides to pull out a weapon, then I can get it nice and close. I can utilize my knee pressure behind him to keep his hips stapled up against the wall, and now we can start working these grips. I can work cross body 2-on-1s, you can work same side 2-on-1s, a lot of different options from there, but you just have to kind of understand how to control from those positions. And he tackles me, doesn't matter which way, I get heavy right away, I start turning those hips, I start posturing, and we start working ourselves out. If he comes in high, once again, I can either start pressuring with my elbow, transition to the forearm, to the hand as I slowly start working out. And again, if he's really uptight with you, start working those knees first at the same time that I work those. Or you have the option of working your underhooks, again, throwing those knees, get those underhooks in there, and we transition now to that shoulder lock, head pressure, and we transition out. So it all kind of just depends on what level they're at, but the key points is, one, utilize the wall as always, get your weight down and shift it off to an angle, and most importantly, apply head pressure as much as possible and as early on as possible to not let this guy get any upper hand on you. So utilize that head pressure, try out these different situations, let us know what you think.